Welcome back to Modern Indian History video series from Clarity of Concept. We were studying the period from 1746 to 1764. This period is very crucial in the history of Indian subcontinent. All major game-changing battles happened during this period. In this period, three different major struggles were going on in different parts of the subcontinent. In West and Northern India, Marathas fought with Ahmad Shah Abdali in Third Panipat battle. It was covered in earlier video. In the south, the French and British rivalry resulted in three Carnatic wars. It was covered in previous video. In this video, we cover the most interesting Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar that occurred in eastern India. Since this topic is very long and very important, we have divided this video into two parts. We shall study till the Battle of Plassey in this video. Before we begin, join our Telegram channel and Instagram page. Our website clarityofconcept.com contains notes and quizzes on our videos. All links are given below. Let us start with what was happening in Bengal region in 18th century. The British East India Company set foot in Bengal in 1651, establishing their initial trading post at Hooghly. Over the next few decades, they gradually expanded their presence, setting up fortified settlements in places like Calcutta. Bengal was one of the wealthiest provinces in India, known for its fertile land, abundant resources, and vibrant trade in textiles, spices, and opium. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, the Mughal Empire's control weakened. By 1717, Murshid Quli Khan effectively declared Bengal almost independent while maintaining nominal allegiance to the Mughal throne. In 1717, Mughal Emperor Farukksiyar issued a farman granting the British East India Company duty-free trade privileges in Bengal. This meant that the company could import and export goods without paying taxes, giving them a significant economic advantage over local merchants who were still taxed heavily. The Nawabs of Bengal, including Murshid Quli Khan, were unhappy with this, as it not only reduced provincial revenues but also undermined their authority. This growing resentment among the Nawabs and local traders set the stage for future conflicts, especially as the British exploited these privileges to expand their influence. After Murshid Quli Khan's death, power eventually passed to Alivardi Khan in 1740. Alivardi ruled Bengal effectively for nearly 16 years. After Alivardi Khan's death in 1756, his grandson Siraj ud Daula ascended to the throne of Bengal. At just 23 years old, Siraj was determined to defend Bengal's autonomy against the growing influence of the British East India Company. However, his rule was far from secure. The young Nawab inherited a court filled with factional rivalries and discontent. Siraj's temperament did little to ease these tensions. He was known for being impulsive, often suspicious of those around him, and quick to take offense. This attitude alienated many powerful figures in his court who had been influential during his grandfather's reign. One of the most significant sources of tension was the relationship between Siraj and Mir Jafar, the commander of his army. Mir Jafar had served loyally under Alivardi Khan but found himself increasingly sidelined by the new Nawab, who viewed him with distrust. Siraj's refusal to grant Mir Jafar the level of authority he expected created a deep sense of resentment. This bitterness would later become a crucial factor in the British strategy to undermine Siraj's rule. Adding to this internal discord was the powerful Jagat Seth banking family, who controlled significant financial resources in Bengal. The Seths were displeased with Siraj's attempt to rein in their influence and saw an opportunity to protect their interests by aligning with the British. Siraj ud Daula's court was further divided by other nobles like Rai Durlab, who were wary of the Nawab's unpredictability and feared for their own positions. The growing dissatisfaction among these influential figures created an atmosphere ripe for conspiracy. As Siraj tried to consolidate his power, He was met with resistance not just from external forces but from within his own administration. This internal turmoil weakened his position, leaving him increasingly isolated at a time when he needed unity the most. Meanwhile, tensions with the British East India Company were reaching a boiling point. The company had fortified its settlement in Calcutta without the Nawab's permission, citing the need for protection against potential threats from rival European powers. However, Siraj ud Daula saw these actions as a direct challenge to his authority. The British had also secured tax exemptions through Farukksiyar's farman that were draining Bengal's revenues, further aggravating the Nawab. Determined to assert his control, Siraj demanded that the British dismantle their fortifications and respect Bengal's sovereignty. The company, however, was unwilling to back down, seeing Siraj's demands as an obstacle to their expanding trade interests. As tensions mounted, Siraj ud Daula became increasingly suspicious of British intentions and the loyalty of his own court. Mir Jafar, feeling marginalized, began secret negotiations with the British. In return for supporting their plans against Siraj, the company promised to install Mir Jafar as the Nawab of Bengal. The Jagat Seths, along with other disgruntled nobles, also threw their weight behind the conspiracy, hoping to protect their interests and curb Siraj's influence. By 1756, Siraj was surrounded by enemies both inside and outside his court, setting the stage for the dramatic confrontations that would follow. The British firmly rejected either to dismantle or stop the fortification in Calcutta. This defiance angered Siraj, so he marched his army to Calcutta and captured the city in June 1756. During this capture, British soldiers and civilians who could not escape were imprisoned in a small dungeon overnight. It is said nearly 150 people were locked up in a very small room without proper ventilation. By morning, only 23 people were found alive due to the death of others due to suffocation. This event came to be known as Black Hole Incident. It is to be noted that this narrative might be over exaggerated. It is based on records of only one survivor. It is possible that he and the East India Company people exaggerated the death toll to justify the future violence against the Nawab of Bengal. When news of this reached Britain, it caused outrage. The East India Company used this incident to justify a strong military response. The company chose Robert Clive to lead the mission to retake Calcutta. Clive had proven himself as a skilled military leader during the Carnatic Wars and had gained fame for capturing Arcot in 1751. In 1753, he had been to England. Clive was recalled by the company in 1756 to fight and subdue Siraj ud Daula, the Nawab of Bengal, for the Black Hole atrocity. Clive quickly realized that fighting Siraj's much larger army directly would be difficult. Instead, he planned to weaken Siraj by creating divisions within his court. Clive secretly reached out to Mir Jafar, who was the commander of Siraj's army. Mir Jafar was unhappy because Siraj had sidelined him, so he was willing to betray the Nawab in exchange for being promised the position of Nawab if the British won. Clive's plan didn't stop there. He also secured support from other influential figures like the Jagat Seths, who were powerful bankers, and Rai Durlab, a court noble. These men were dissatisfied with Siraj's leadership and feared losing their power. They saw Clive as a way to protect their interests. In return for their support, Clive promised them that they would be well rewarded once Siraj was defeated. However, not everyone in Clive's camp trusted these promises. Some of Clive's officers were worried that Mir Jafar and his allies might betray the British instead. They argued that relying on these secret deals was too risky, especially since Siraj's army was much larger. But Clive was confident that Mir Jafar's greed and resentment towards Siraj would be enough to secure his loyalty. In June 1757, Clive marched his forces towards Plassey, near the Bhagirathi river. Siraj ud Daula gathered his troops to face Clive, but he did not know that many of his own commanders had already agreed to side with the British. On the morning of 23rd June 1757, both sides prepared for battle. The British had about 3,000 soldiers, including 800 Europeans and 2,200 Indian sepoys, while Siraj's army was much larger, with 50,000 troops. In the early morning of 23rd June 1757, just before the battle began, heavy rain fell on the battlefield. Siraj's troops were not prepared. Their gunpowder got wet because it was left uncovered, making their cannons useless. The British, on the other hand, had kept their gunpowder dry by wrapping it in tarpaulin sheets and were able to fire their cannons effectively once the fighting started. Mir Jafar, who was supposed to fight for Siraj, held his troops back as planned with Clive. This confused Siraj's soldiers, who started losing confidence. Realizing that Mir Jafar was not going to help him, Siraj panicked. His troops began to retreat as the British advanced. Within a few hours, Siraj's army was in chaos and he fled the battlefield, heading towards his capital Murshidabad. After the defeat, Siraj tried to escape in disguise but was captured on 2nd July 1757 by Mir Jafar's son Miran. The next day, Siraj ud Daula was executed, ending his rule. Clive's victory at Plassey was secured not just by military strength but through the secret deals that ensured Mir Jafar's betrayal at the critical moment. This battle marked a turning point in Indian history. Although Clive's forces were much smaller, they used strategy and the disloyalty within Siraj's ranks to win. This victory gave the British control over Bengal, which was one of the wealthiest regions in India, paving the way for their domination in India. After the British victory at the Battle of Plassey in 1757, Robert Clive and the East India Company wasted no time in securing their financial gains. In exchange for installing Mir Jafar as the new Nawab of Bengal, the company demanded a hefty payment. Mir Jafar agreed to pay the company a sum of 2 crore rupees. In addition to this, Mir Jafar had to pay additional 1 crore rupees that was to be distributed among the company's officials. Out of this 1 crore rupees, Robert Clive personally received 28 lakh rupees, making him one of the wealthiest men of that era. To understand the significance of these amounts, let's translate them to today's value. The 2 crore rupees given to the company would be worth around 20 to 25,000 crores in modern terms, considering the enormous influence such wealth could wield. The 28 lakh rupees Clive received alone would be equivalent to about 3 to 4,000 crore rupees of today. This made Clive one of the richest individuals of his time, allowing him to exert significant power and influence both in India and back in Britain. But Clive's rewards did not stop at the cash payment. He was also granted land grants, that is Jagirs, over 24 paraganas near Calcutta. These lands provided Clive with an annual income of about 30,000 pounds at that time, which would translate to around 500 crore rupees today in terms of purchasing power and influence. This steady income added to Clive's already substantial wealth, solidifying his financial and political power. However, the situation soon became challenging for Mir Jafar. The financial burden of paying such large sums to the British left the new Nawab struggling to maintain control. This is all about the Battle of Plassey. But a lot happened after the battle. These huge money transfers and payment obligations created a new set of problems and resulted in the Battle of Buxar. We shall study that in next part of this video, which continues from here. We shall also touch Diwani rights in next video. Follow our playlist to watch all videos in order. Don't forget to join our Telegram channel and visit website. Like and subscribe to our channel Clarity of Concept.